So yeah, I got married. And a week before my wedding, I found myself at the Pittsburgh Greyhound station at 4 in the morning, ready to take a trip up to Boston. How did this happen? Well, it all started when I didn't do my research.
Wait, can I sing this one?
Sure.
Caleb went down to the courthouse just to get a marriage license. But when he checked the website, he'd looked over some fine print. You can't apply online if you are not in the same place. Caleb didn't do his research, now against the clock he'll race. With just 1 week to go until the big ceremony, he's heading up to Boston to apply with his gal key. But flights are too expensive and no Amtrak seats are found, so he'll use his wedding gift from miles on a ticket on
Greyhound!
What a shame now.
So there I was, in the Pittsburgh Greyhound station, ready to travel up to Boston and apply for a marriage license with Calcutta. The cheapest ticket I could find left at $4.50 in the morning, and involved a Greyhound bus to Newark, a Flixbus to New York City, and another Flixbus to Boston. Of course, it turns out that a 2-mile Uber ride through Pittsburgh in the middle of the night costs an extra $45, so I didn't really save any money by doing this. Finally, we were on the bus. It was, as one might expect, pretty darn empty, it being 5:30 in the morning on a Sunday. And oh, would you look at that, it was starting to snow. Since I shot a lot more footage on this adventure than I have narration for, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to answer some of your questions. So yes, this is a Q&A video. How did you meet Calcutta? We met in the dining hall in college about a month into our freshman year, and we ended up being lab partners in chemistry class. We then remained friends for several years, and officially started dating after an Acela trip to DC together in 2022. Which is your favorite high-speed rail network and why? China's. Their network is massive yet comprehensive, and it's a useful and relatively affordable system. What will it take to give Pittsburgh a good Amtrak station again? Prayer and a miracle. One nap later, we were stepping off at a turnpike plaza, where the snow was coming down thick and fast. It is cold. Where even are we? I was asleep until a moment ago. I literally have no idea where we are. This is proper snow. Where's the entrance? I think it's over here. I ended up braving the cold to make it into the plaza. It did leave me wondering, how delayed was the storm going to make us? At least I ended up with a nice warm breakfast sandwich from Burger King. If you could rebuild one closed incline in Pittsburgh, which one would it be? I feel like the popular answer to this is the Penn Incline, but instead I'll pick the Bellevue and Davis Island Incline, which wasn't really a traditional incline, but more of an outdoor elevator and dinky little electric streetcar working in combination. This thing ran for only a couple of years, and despite being rather sad and pathetic, I really think it deserves another shot at life, or at least a video about its weird and fascinating history. Favorite light rail system? I've got a soft spot for Pittsburgh just because it's local. St. Louis really impressed me with how much it gets done with just 2 lines, and San Diego's is pretty cool because it basically serves another country. But of the systems I've ridden, I've got to say Seattle. I know it's cool to hate on it for not being a metro, but it pushes light rail to its limits, and the infrastructure they built for it is really impressive. Outside of the mega connecting trip to meet Calcutta's family, what was your favorite trip of 2023? My trip to meet Calcutta's family was my favorite trip not just of 2023, but of all time. But if we roll that out, then I'd have to pick my cross-country Amtrak trip with Calcutta 6 months later. Outside of anything involving Calcutta, my favorite trip of 2023 was St. Louis and Denver, since I got to really thoroughly experience each city's transit, and in the case of the former, meet up with some fun locals. We rolled into Harrisburg nearly 2 hours late, then meandered through the city streets to get back on the highway. Shortly afterwards, we made a quick stop at Sheetz, where I got a sandwich. Sorry, in Sheetz speak, it's technically a wedge. If you had the chance to operate a specific bus and train from any agency, which two would you pick? In terms of buses, honestly anything double-decker. That would be so much fun to drive. I think I saw a video a year or two ago of a guy who refurbished a London double-decker bus and took it to a McDonald's drive-thru, and that's kind of life goals for me. For heavy rail, I'd love to drive WMATA's 7000 series cars, while for light rail, I'd love to operate SD400s on the Pittsburgh system, or else the Liberty liner they have at the Rock Hill Trolley Museum. We rolled into Newark and paralleled the Northeast Corridor. Unfortunately, Newark Penn Station only has curbside pickup, and this was taken up by smaller vehicles, something our driver was not very happy about.
Come on, y'all got to do something with this. Get out my spot. Let's go. Come on, you got to move this. Yeah, you got to move. No, you move.
Since we had arrived in Newark after my connecting FlixBus to New York, our driver let me stay on to the Port Authority bus terminal. What's your motivation to keep making videos? Primarily, it's a means to better enjoy my hobby of trains and transit. It gives me an excuse to make the trips I want to, and to tell the stories I encounter to others, and it gives me the financial support to keep adventuring. It also connects me with all sorts of wonderful people who share my interests and passions. Once we arrived in the city that never sleeps, I headed to the subway to make a pilgrimage to my favorite Jewish bakery. What is your opinion about Amtrak's future plans for Long Island? I know this proposal has been knocked from time to time, but I honestly really like the idea of a Northeast regional service to Ronkonkoma. In the longer term, I would think Aero train sets could handle this. But in the near future, it would be wild to see Northeast regional consists between Ronkonkoma and DC, with sprinters on one end and P-32s on the other to handle the change in power at Penn Station. What rail project do you think gets talked about less than it should? All the stuff they're doing down in Mexico. It goes well beyond Tren Maya, which in and of itself doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Mexico is pushing to bring back its national passenger rail network, and while the effort is problematic on all sorts of levels, it's also perhaps the biggest push for passenger rail in the Western Hemisphere since the dawn of the new millennium. But that's going to be its own video. Favorite of the New York City Metro commuter systems? Long Island Railroad for sure. I'm honestly fascinated by how densely served the island is compared to really any other larger region of the US. It reminds me a little of systems in the Eastern Hemisphere. Obviously it's not perfect, but it has a denser, more multifaceted feel than Metro-North Railroad or New Jersey Transit, which feel primarily like hub-and-spoke operations. Nasty Philadelphia hot dog or Altoona-style pizza? Altoona-style pizza for sure. It's just weird and boring rather than openly disgusting. City that you've been to with the absolute worst transit? Honestly, lately Boston, at least when it comes to rapid rail transit. I've just had consistently awful experiences on it when I've come to visit Calcutta, especially on the Red Line. Commuter rail is still great though. FlixBus operates out of a vacant lot opposite New York's Moynihan Train Hall, and boy was it a mess. A few employees were directing people and yelling out destinations. Signs in bus windows were really the only other way to tell where buses were going. There was nowhere to sit, and buses were moving around constantly, blocking people and traffic. It's a wonder that they haven't been shut down yet. The experience on board was top-notch, however, with a clean interior, an empty seat next to me, and 4 hours to go until our next stop in Boston. Favorite topic you've covered? I have several. Paradise Station was one of my favorite stories I've ever done. Investigative journalism for that one was a lot of fun. I also loved making the Hot Dogs of the Northeast Corridor series just due to the diversity of local history and lore that I unearthed along the way, although disappointingly these never did very well. And Ethiopia's trains are something I've wanted to cover for a very long time. But if I had to pick one, I'd say transit accessibility, especially my interview videos. I'd love to make more of these in the future. Favorite song you found recently? Disco Proof by LaRoe and Chromeo. Have you got your doctorate degree yet? Nope, that's coming summer 2025. I hope to celebrate by finally visiting Japan. One can dream. Most overrated transit city, in my opinion. Los Angeles! I'm gonna say it, their transit is pretty weak compared to a lot of other major US cities. They rely on light rail like a crutch when they really should have built a BART-style system, and a lot of their stuff radiates off of downtown when the city just doesn't function that way. They're doing a ton to build transit, I really respect that. They're doing a lot more than other cities of their size, but it barely comes close to what the region needs. They made some pretty poor planning decisions a while ago, and those are coming back to bite them. What is your ranking of all the big main carriers and low-cost carrier airlines? I don't really have a ranking, and I just fly on what's cheapest. That said, I have reasons to love and hate most of the major US airlines. Delta is great for accessibility. I have a friend who is hearing impaired, and they've been consistently wonderful to him in that regard. But you can't get miles from a basic economy ticket anymore, which is very annoying. I appreciate United's push towards sustainability and hiring Oscar the Grouch as a PR stunt, not to mention getting in on the whole Boom Supersonic thing, even if that's probably never going to pan out. But they also break guitars and people, not to mention they're starting to charge extra for carry-ons. Y'all aren't an LCC, don't act like one. American wins for coverage, but its immense size means that there's more moving parts, which presents a pretty big risk factor. Southwest was a great choice for my family growing up, but today it's rarely the cheapest option for me, at least traveling as I normally do without checked bags. It's very annoying how they don't appear on fare aggregator sites. I'm sure they have their reasons for that, but it still drives me crazy. And the older I get, the more I dislike the open seating and check-in system. JetBlue has one of my favorite onboard experiences, especially on their transcontinental flights with their open bar and snacks. But come on, if they're going to offer a mainline carrier experience, they shouldn't be charging extra for carry-ons. I generally actually really appreciate Spirit and Frontier for making travel affordable, but their business model mandates limited coverage to certain markets, weird flight schedules, and occasionally pricing flights higher than their mainline competition. Frontier also maybe needs to stop with the whole eco-friendly branding thing until they figure out a way to not burn jet fuel. Avelo is pretty cool, and I'm pretty amazed that their model works so well, but they need to stop sending me 50% off emails every couple days. If they're discounting all of their flights all the time, I don't know how they're making money. Breeze's model is also innovative, but their in-flight amenities were fairly limited when I flew them, even for the highest paying customers. Video on that coming at some point. I haven't flown Alaska since I was a kid, and I haven't flown Allegiant, Hawaiian, or Sun Country at all, so I don't have opinions on them. If money was no object for one video, what would you make? Riding the entire Shinkansen network in a single video. My original idea had been to speedrun the whole thing, but I think that would be a disservice to Japan and its people, so I would plan it out where I'd stop in different cities and check stuff out. Rather than heading into downtown, this bus dropped me off in Brookline, which meant Calcadon didn't have to drive into the city, but it was still a little hard to find each other.
Hello.
Calcadon and I met up for Five Guys, closing the gap of our long-distance relationship one final time. The next day, we hit the road for Pennsylvania. So Calcadon was wondering if her car was making like suspicious sounds, and I told her no, it's just Pennsylvania.
This on the highway. You're doing go on the highway. My poor tires that just got changed. Look at that.
Several days of prep later, and with a marriage license secured, it was time for the big day, and I was united for life with my favorite person. Thanks in part to Greyhound.
I would like to send a formal complaint against whoever planned this wedding. I'm blaming it on Caleb, obviously. This hostile architecture for the benches here, the seats. If I wanted to lie down across these, I couldn't. Unless maybe if I put them together, I could maybe uncomfortably do it. But frankly, it'd be really uncomfortable, I would say. I wish there was a sleeper option at this wedding, maybe a bed where I could sleep. So that's my formal complaint against Caleb specifically. And Caleb, when you're editing it, just know that I'm complaining against you and only you. Congratulations.
Insult them all you want.